I still remember the way the air felt that morning. Thick, heavy, and cold, as if the sky itself was mourning with us. The day we buried my grandmother, nothing felt right. The church smelled faintly of old wood and lilies, and every face I looked at seemed more hollow than the last. I was standing at the very back, holding my mother's hand, pretending to be strong. But inside, I was falling apart. My grandmother, or Nana, as I always called her, was the one person who made this family feel like home. She was warmth, laughter, and forgiveness, all wrapped in one soft-spoken woman who somehow held everyone together. And now, with her gone, I could feel the cracks forming already. I glanced at my father across the aisle. He wasn't crying, not even close. He was standing tall, his expression cold, one hand tucked neatly into his coat pocket. My mother whispered, "He's just processing it differently." But deep down, I knew better. My father didn't process pain. He calculated it. When the priest finished the final prayer, people started leaving, murmuring polite condolences, their black coats brushing past mine. That's when I noticed my grandfather sitting alone near the casket, his frail hands trembling as he touched the edge of Nana's photograph. He looked so small, so lost. I walked up to him quietly and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Grandpa," I said softly, "let's go home." He nodded without looking at me. "She would have wanted us to eat together," he whispered. His voice cracked on the last word. That was the moment I thought the worst was behind us. But I was wrong. That was only the beginning. The reception was held at our old family home, the kind of place that carried more ghosts than people. The smell of roasted coffee filled the living room, and voices buzzed softly like static. My uncles and aunts sat around, pretending to comfort Grandpa, but I could feel the tension under every sentence. Everyone was already thinking about what came next: the property, the inheritance, the land that had been in our family for generations, Nana's garden, the farmhouse, the jewelry she'd kept, locked away for years. I didn't want to believe it, but money had always been the invisible shadow in every family gathering, and that night, it finally took shape. I was pouring tea in the kitchen when I heard my father's voice in the next room. His tone was low, sharp, familiar, the same tone he used when negotiating something that mattered to him. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. Through the cracked door, I saw him standing by the fireplace with my grandfather. The rest of the house was quiet. Everyone else had gone home. "Dad," my father said, his voice steady, almost casual. "You know how things are now. Mom's gone. You're not getting any younger. Someone has to take care of everything." Grandpa didn't reply. My father stepped closer. "You should write everything to me. The house, the land, all of it. I'll handle the rest." There it was, the sentence that burned itself into my memory forever. "You should write everything to me." My heart stopped. Grandpa looked up at him, his eyes glistening. "It's too soon to talk about that," he said weakly. "It's not," my father replied. "You know how the others are. They'll start fighting over every little thing. You can trust me, Dad." His words dripped with false reassurance. I knew that tone. I'd heard it when he lied to my mother, when he promised me he'd try harder, before disappearing for nights on end. I watched Grandpa sigh, his frail hands shaking. He looked so tired, as if the world had asked too much from him already. Then my father leaned down and put a hand on his shoulder. "Mom would have wanted me to take care of things. You know that." For a second, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt in Grandpa's eyes. Or maybe it was fear. Either way, I couldn't listen anymore. I stepped back, the teacup trembling in my hand, and left the kitchen quietly. I walked out to the porch, the night air biting against my cheeks. The sky was dark, but one small light glowed from Nana's old rose garden. She had strung fairy lights there years ago, and somehow they still worked. I stood there under that faint glow and cried silently, not just because she was gone, but because I already knew something inside our family had just shattered, and it would never be the same again. Later that night, I tried to talk to my mother. "Mom," I whispered, "I heard Dad talking to Grandpa. He's asking for the property, everything." She looked startled, but then her face softened. "Tired, resigned. Emma," she said gently, "it's better if you don't get involved. Your father, he has his ways. We'll be fine." Her words were like a door closing. We'll be fine. But we weren't. The next few weeks passed like a blur. Grandpa started spending more time alone, refusing visitors. My father was always running errands, dressed in his suit, going to meetings I wasn't allowed to ask about. My mother grew quieter each day, and me, I started writing everything down, every detail, every whisper, every suspicious glance, because somewhere deep inside, I knew one day I'd need to remember all of it. A month after the funeral, I found Grandpa sitting in the garden, staring at Nana's old swing. The wind was soft, carrying the smell of jasmine from the fence. He looked at me and smiled faintly. "You look just like her when she was young," he said. Same eyes, same stubborn heart. I knelt beside him. "Grandpa," I whispered, "are you okay?" He took my hand in his and held it for a long time. "Emma," he said slowly, "promise me something. Anything. If something ever happens to me, don't let anyone tell you what's yours. Your grandmother had plans. She always did. She wanted things to be fair." His words confused me. But before I could ask, my father's voice cut through the garden. "Dad, you shouldn't be out here too long. Come inside." Grandpa let go of my hand and smiled at me one last time. "Take care of yourself, my dear." And that was it. I didn't know it then, but that would be our last real conversation. That night, as the house fell silent, I sat by my window and looked at the stars. Somewhere, I imagined Nana watching us, disappointed, heartbroken, because she had raised a family built on love, and now all that was left were cracks filled with greed. I made a quiet promise to her in the dark, that no matter what happened next, I'd protect what she left behind, even if it meant standing alone. The days after Grandma's funeral blurred together, like a long, grey shadow stretching endlessly. The house that once smelled like baked bread and lavender oil now carried a faint scent of dust and silence. Her laughter, the sound that once floated through every room, was gone. What remained was something colder, a quiet that made your skin crawl. At first, everyone pretended to mourn in the same way. We wore black, attended church, and spoke softly. But behind those polite gestures, something darker began to take shape. My father changed first. He started wearing his best suits to appointments. He'd leave early in the morning, sometimes not returning until late at night. When I asked where he went, he'd just wave his hand dismissively. "Business matters, Emma. Things you wouldn't understand." But I wasn't a child anymore. I understood enough to see that he wasn't grieving. He was preparing to own everything. I caught him one morning in Grandpa's study, going through old files. The door was slightly ajar, and I saw him flipping through property papers, muttering to himself. When he realized I was watching, he smiled. "Too easily, too confidently. Your grandfather's been a bit forgetful," he said casually, sliding the documents into his briefcase. "I'm just helping him organize. Helping him organize." That phrase would stick in my throat for weeks. Grandpa wasn't the same either. His eyes, once bright with mischief and humor, now looked tired, like he was carrying invisible weights on his shoulders. He'd sit on the porch every morning, holding a cup of tea that always went cold before he finished it. Sometimes I'd find him staring at the gate, as if waiting for someone who never came. When I asked if he was all right, he'd just pat my hand and change the subject. It wasn't until one rainy afternoon that I realized just how much he'd withdrawn. I came home from the grocery store and found him, sitting alone in Nana's old room, her photograph on his lap. Tears had stained his cheeks. "Grandpa," I whispered, kneeling beside him. He looked up, startled, then smiled faintly. "I was just talking to her," he said. "I keep hoping she'll answer me back." His voice broke. I reached out and hugged him tightly, feeling his frail frame tremble in my arms. That night, I cried myself to sleep, not just for Grandma, but for the way our family seemed to be unraveling, thread by thread. My mother, meanwhile, tried to hold everything together. She busied herself with cleaning, cooking, and pretending nothing was wrong. But I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. At dinner, silence had become the third guest at our table. My father would scroll through his phone, my mother would pick at her food, and Grandpa would stare into his plate, lost somewhere in thought. Once, I tried to bring up what I'd overheard at the funeral. "Dad," I said carefully, "you told Grandpa to write everything to you. What did you mean by that?" The sound of his fork dropping onto the plate was louder than thunder. He looked at me, not with surprise, but with warning. His jaw tightened. "Don't repeat things you don't understand," he said coldly. "This is family business, not gossip for children." "I'm not a child," I said quietly. "Then act like it." He stood up and left the table, leaving the room heavy with silence. My mother reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "Please, Emma, don't make things worse." "Worse? How could it get any worse than this?" Weeks passed. Grandpa grew weaker, though no one seemed to notice except me. I tried to get him to see a doctor, but he refused. "I don't want more hospitals," he said. "I just want peace." One evening, while my father was out, Grandpa called me into his room. The rain was pouring outside, tapping softly against the windows. He motioned for me to sit. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Emma," he said, "there's something you need to know, something your grandmother wanted you to have." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, glancing toward the door as if afraid someone might be listening. Then he leaned closer. "There's an old chest in the attic, your grandmother's. She told me before she passed. There's a letter inside. It's for you." "For me?" He nodded. "She said it holds the truth. Don't let anyone else see it. Not even your father. Promise me." My heart started pounding. "I promise." He smiled, looking relieved. "You always had her spirit. She knew you'd understand when the time comes." I wanted to ask more, but a car engine roared outside. "My father's." Grandpa's expression changed immediately. "Go," he whispered. Not a word about this to him. I nodded quickly and slipped out, just as my father walked in, shaking off his umbrella. He eyed me suspiciously. "What were you doing in there?" "I was saying goodnight," I lied. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't press further. Still, as I walked away, I could feel his eyes burning into my back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the sound of rain, my mind racing. What could possibly be in that chest? Why would Grandma hide something meant only for me? By morning, I had decided. When everyone was asleep, I climbed up to the attic with a flashlight. The air smelled like dust and old wood, and cobwebs hung like thin curtains over forgotten memories. And there it was, the chest. Grandma's old wooden chest, carved with faded flowers, sitting quietly in the corner. I knelt beside it and traced my fingers over the lid. My hands were shaking as I unlatched the metal lock. Inside were photographs, letters, and small trinkets. Her rosary, her wedding ribbon, the family Bible. But there was no letter, not yet. I was about to close it when I noticed a false bottom beneath the stack of photographs. My breath caught. I slid my nails under the edge and lifted it carefully. And there, folded neatly, was an envelope with my name written in her handwriting. Emma, just my name, nothing else. I froze. holding it in my trembling hands. The paper was yellowed, fragile. I could almost hear her voice whispering in the silence. But before I could open it, I heard footsteps creak on the floor below. Someone was awake. The flashlight flickered. Emma. My father's voice echoed faintly from downstairs. "What are you doing up there?" My heart dropped. I shoved the envelope into my sweater pocket, quickly replaced the photographs, and closed the chest. "I was just looking for old photos," I called back, trying to sound calm. His footsteps paused. Then, after a moment, I heard the soft click of his door closing again. I sat there in the darkness, my pulse pounding in my ears. Whatever was in that letter, Grandma had gone to great lengths to hide it from him, and somehow, I already knew, it would change everything. That night, I couldn't bring myself to open it. Instead, I held it against my chest and whispered, Tomorrow, I'd find out why my grandmother trusted me and what secret my father didn't want anyone to uncover. I didn't sleep that night. The letter felt like a heartbeat against my chest, faint but alive, whispering secrets through the thin paper. When dawn finally came, the first thing I saw was the pale sunlight spilling across the floor, catching the edge of the envelope on my nightstand. It looked harmless, and yet I knew it wasn't. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The handwriting was definitely hers. Graceful, familiar, with the same looping E she'd written on my birthday cards. For a long time, I just stared at it, afraid to know what was inside, because deep down, I sensed that whatever truth she had hidden, it would change everything. Finally, I tore it open. Inside were 3 things: a short letter, a key, and a small folded note that looked like it had been handled many times. The letter read, My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, I'm already gone, and I pray you remember me not with tears, but with strength. Your father has lost his way. He believes love can be replaced with money, and family with ownership. I've seen this coming for years, but your grandfather refused to face it. I've hidden something your father must never find. The real will. It's not with the lawyer. It's in a place only you will think to look. The key I've left is for the drawer in the rosewood cabinet in the old study, the one that was always locked. Inside, you'll find what truly belongs to you. Use it wisely, my darling. Nana. My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes. The weight of those words pressed down on me, heavy and trembling. The real will. Not the one my father was fighting for, but the one my grandmother had kept safe, hidden, waiting for me. I unfolded the smaller note next. It was written in my grandfather's shaky handwriting, probably added later. Trust no one, especially your father. That's when I realized Grandpa knew. He knew everything. I wanted to run to him immediately, to show him the letter, to tell him I understood now. But something held me back. The sound of my father's voice downstairs. He was already awake, talking on the phone. His tone was calm, smooth. The voice he used for manipulation. Yes, we'll move forward with the transfer, he said. He agreed in principle. The paperwork just needs his signature. A pause. No, she doesn't know anything. My daughter, she minds her own business. I froze in the hallway, my heart hammering. The transfer. He was talking about Grandpa's estate. I backed away before he noticed me and returned to my room, shutting the door quietly. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own father. That afternoon, I went to see Grandpa. He was in his room, resting, a thin blanket over his legs. The air smelled faintly of camphor and old books. He opened his eyes when he heard me enter, and a faint smile touched his lips. Emma, he whispered. I was just thinking of you. I knelt beside him. Grandpa, I found her letter, I said softly. His eyes widened slightly, and then he looked relieved, almost peaceful. So she told you. She told me about the real will, I said. And the key, he nodded slowly. Your grandmother was always 2 steps ahead of everyone. She knew your father better than anyone. She tried to protect what was right. He reached for my hand. His grip was weak but steady. I wanted to tell you sooner, he said, but I needed to be sure you were ready. The family's not what it seems, Emma. There are things you don't know. What things? He hesitated, glancing toward the door. Not now. He'll be back soon. But there's something else you must understand. Your grandmother's wealth wasn't just money. She had property in her name. The old vineyard, the farmland, even the small cottage near the river, all in her possession. And she wanted you to have them. I felt my throat tighten. Me? But why? He smiled faintly. Because she saw herself in you. She knew you wouldn't use it to hurt anyone. You'd preserve it. Then his expression darkened. Your father has already started meeting with the lawyer. I think he plans to change the documents. My heart dropped. But he can't. He can if I sign, Grandpa said softly. And he's been pressuring me every day. I could see the fear in his eyes now. A quiet kind of terror that comes from knowing you're being hunted not by strangers, but by your own blood. Don't let him, I whispered fiercely. Please, Grandpa, don't sign anything. He smiled again, tired but certain. I won't, but if something happens to me before I can fix this, that letter will lead you to everything you need. Promise me you'll follow it. I promise. He squeezed my hand one last time. Good. That's my brave girl. 2 days later, everything changed. I came home from work to find the house in chaos. My mother was crying in the hallway, my father shouting into his phone, and 2 paramedics rushing down the stairs. Dad, what happened? I gasped. My father turned toward me, his face pale. It's your grandfather, he said flatly. He collapsed. My legs went weak. I ran past him, into Grandpa's room. But it was empty now. The bed was still warm, the cup of tea half finished on the table. He's being taken to the hospital, my mother sobbed. They said he just fell asleep in his chair and didn't wake up. My father's voice cut through her crying like a blade. Don't exaggerate. He's old. These things happen. The coldness in his tone made me flinch. That night, we waited in the hospital until the doctor came out. He looked at us, his expression grim. I'm sorry, he said softly. He passed peacefully. Heart failure. The words shattered something inside me. I remember the sound of my mother's sobs, echoing down the sterile hallway. I remember my father's face, dry, expressionless, and I remember standing there, clutching my bag, knowing this wasn't the end, because Grandpa had promised me something. And I still had that letter, and that key. After the funeral, my father wasted no time. Within a week, he was already arranging meetings with the lawyer, claiming it was for estate closure. When I tried to ask questions, he brushed me off. You don't understand how these things work, he said. Let the adults handle it. But I wasn't letting anything go. One evening when he was out, I went to the old study, the one my grandmother had mentioned in her letter. The rosewood cabinet stood against the wall, untouched for years. Its surface was coated in dust, but the lock gleamed faintly under the lamplight. I took out the key with shaking hands and slid it into the lock. It turned easily, almost as if it had been waiting. Inside the drawer were stacks of old books, a jewelry box, and a leather folder bound with twine. My heart pounded as I untied it, and there it was. A handwritten will, dated 2 months before Grandma's death. I scanned the first few lines and felt tears well in my eyes. I, Margaret Rose Delaney, being of sound mind, leave the following to my granddaughter, Emma Delaney. The rest of the words blurred as I read them through tears. She'd left everything to me, the house, the land, the savings, all of it, not to my father, not to any of them, to me. I pressed my hand against my mouth to stop myself from gasping. For a long time, I just sat there in stunned silence, feeling the weight of what this meant. Then, I heard the front door open downstairs. My father's voice. Emma, are you home? I panicked. I slipped the will back into the folder, locked the drawer again, and shoved the key into my pocket. Coming! I called out, forcing my voice to sound normal. He appeared at the bottom of the stairs, smiling too easily. There you are. I've got some news. The lawyer's coming tomorrow. We'll be finalizing some documents. I felt my heart sink. Documents? He nodded. Yes, your grandfather's estate. Finally time to put things in order. I forced a smile. That's good. But inside, I was shaking because I knew tomorrow he'd try to claim everything. And now I held the proof that it all belonged to me. That night, I couldn't close my eyes. I sat by my window again, holding the folder tightly, hearing my father pacing downstairs on the phone. His voice drifted faintly through the vent. Yes, everything will be in my name by tomorrow. He wanted it that way. A lie. And for the first time in my life, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt anger. Cold, clear, quiet anger. I whispered into the night, "You stole from Grandpa once. You won't do it again," because my grandmother had trusted me with the truth, and I wasn't going to let that trust die with her. I'll never forget the day the lawyer came. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of day that feels too calm, too bright, before a storm. The living room was filled with sunlight, yet everything felt cold. The curtains swayed slightly, and I could hear the faint ticking of the grandfather clock, each second stretching out like a warning. My father had been unusually cheerful all morning. He brewed coffee, straightened his tie, and hummed as if it was some kind of celebration. E, on the other hand, sat in silence, clutching the hidden folder in my room upstairs. Grandma's real will. My pulse wouldn't slow down. I knew what was about to happen. I just didn't know how far he was willing to go. By noon, everyone had arrived. My uncles, my aunts, even a few cousins who hadn't visited in years. The lawyer, Mr. Hall, came last. He was a tall, thin man with silver hair and a polished briefcase. "Shall we begin?" he said, setting his papers on the dining table. The room went quiet. I could feel the air tighten as everyone sat down, pretending to be somber. My father stood beside the lawyer, one hand on his shoulder, like they were old friends. I sat opposite them, my heart pounding. Mr. Hall cleared his throat. "This is the last will and testament of the late Mr. Richard Delaney," he began. I froze. Mr. Richard Delaney, my grandfather's name, not Grandma's. This wasn't her will. This was his. My eyes shot to my father. He was smiling faintly, a wolfish satisfaction curling at the edges of his lips. "The will reads," the lawyer continued, "that all property, assets, and holdings belonging to the Delaney family estate shall be transferred to his eldest son, Mr. Thomas Delaney." A murmur rippled through the room. "To be held in trust until such a time as Mr. Delaney deems fit to distribute among family members." My stomach dropped. Eldest son, my father, everything, the house, the land, the money, all of it, suddenly, officially his. I shot to my feet before I could stop myself. "That's not right," I said. My voice shook, but I didn't care. "That's not the real will." The lawyer blinked. "Excuse me?" I took a step forward. "My grandmother had a will. She left it with Grandpa. Emma!" My father interrupted, his tone sharp. "Sit down." "No," I said louder. "She left me something. I saw it. Enough." His voice thundered through the room. "Do not embarrass yourself in front of everyone." I turned toward my mother. "Mom, tell them. You know Grandma trusted me." But she wouldn't meet my eyes. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, trembling. My uncle cleared his throat awkwardly. "Thomas, maybe we should let her..." "Let her what?" My father snapped. "Spread lies about the dead." My father made his choice. He wanted this family protected from chaos. And Emma, he turned toward me, his eyes burning, has been nothing but a troublemaker lately. My heart felt like it cracked. I'm not lying, I whispered. He smirked, that cruel familiar smirk. Then where's your proof? I froze. My proof, the real will, was upstairs, hidden beneath the floorboard under my bed. But looking at his face, I knew if I mentioned it now, he'd find a way to take it from me before I could even breathe. He leaned closer. You see, Emma, he said softly enough that only I could hear. You shouldn't get involved in things that aren't yours. His words were poison. I stared at him, at this man who was supposed to be my father, and I felt something shift inside me. The last thread of respect snapping. Grandpa didn't choose you, I said, my voice low but steady. You forced him. The entire room fell silent. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. His hand twitched, and his jaw tightened. But then he smiled again. A cold, empty smile. You should leave, he said. What? This house isn't yours. You have no right to be here. No claim to anything. So unless you want to keep embarrassing yourself, pack your things and go. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother finally spoke, her voice barely audible. Thomas, please. Don't, he snapped. She's made her choice. She sides with me or against me. That single sentence told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't just claiming property. He was claiming control over everyone. I stood there, shaking, my eyes burning. You can take whatever you want, I said quietly, but you'll never take what she left behind. You'll see. He laughed, a short mocking sound. Fairy tales, Emma. You were always your grandmother's little dreamer. I left that house the same day. No one stopped me. Not my mother, not my uncles. Only the maid, an old family servant named Rosa, ran after me as I walked down the gravel path. Miss Emma, she called, breathless. Wait, take this. She pressed a small wrapped bundle into my hand. My grandmother's rosary, and a faded photograph of us in the garden. She told me once, Rosa whispered, that if the house ever turned cold, you'd be the one to bring the light back. I couldn't speak. I just hugged her and walked away, tears streaming down my face. Behind me, the house loomed, tall, proud, and cruelly silent. It wasn't a home anymore. It was his kingdom now. For weeks, I drifted from one cheap room to another, trying to piece together my life. I found a small job at a bookstore, sleeping in a rented apartment, barely bigger than my grandmother's pantry. Every night, I'd take out her letter and read it again, tracing each word like it could keep me warm. Use it wisely, my darling. But how could I when I had nothing left? My savings were gone. My family had turned their backs. My father had taken everything. The house, the business, even my mother's jewelry. And yet, in the quiet, I found something strange. Freedom. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to tiptoe around my father's temper or hide behind my mother's silence. I could breathe, still. That didn't make the pain easier. Some nights, I'd sit by the window, staring at the city lights, wondering if Grandma could see me. I tried. I'd whisper. But I wasn't strong enough. And then, one rainy night, when I was packing up old boxes of my things, something unexpected happened. At the very bottom of one box, the one Rosa had helped me pack, I found it. Grandma's old chest. The same one from the attic. I hadn't realized she'd taken it when I left. I sat there, staring at it in disbelief. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. The scent of lavender and cedar hit me instantly. The scent of her. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was the small Bible she always carried. I picked it up, flipping through the pages, remembering how she used to press dried flowers between them. And then, something slipped out from between the pages. A sealed envelope, My heart stopped. It was addressed to me in the same familiar handwriting. For Emma, when everything feels lost. I tore it open, my eyes filling as I read. If you're reading this, it means he's won. For now. But don't lose heart, my darling. The truth cannot stay buried forever. Look beneath the garden, the one where my roses grow. That's where I kept what he could never find. I gasped. Beneath the garden. My grandmother's garden. The one behind the old house. She'd hidden something there. Something my father never knew about. Something she wanted me to find. I held the letter to my chest and whispered into the silence. I'll find it, Nana. I swear I will. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. A new kind of fire building inside me. He might have won the first battle, but the war wasn't over. Not yet. It was past midnight when I finally made up my mind. The letter lay on my desk, its edges worn from where I kept running my fingers over Grandma's handwriting. Look beneath the garden, the one where my roses grow. Those words wouldn't stop echoing in my head. I knew what she meant. The rose garden behind the old house, the one she used to spend hours in every morning. I could still picture her kneeling there, hands deep in soil, her sun hat tilted just enough to hide her smile, and I could almost hear her voice saying, "The earth remembers what people forget." I didn't care how dangerous it was. I had to go back. The next evening, I drove to the estate under the cover of darkness. The house stood like a shadow at the end of the road, silent, immense, and cold. The lights were still on in the upstairs rooms. My father was home, but I didn't come for him. I parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the distance on foot, clutching a flashlight and a small shovel I'd borrowed from my neighbor. The garden gate creaked as I pushed it open. The air was heavy with damp earth and the scent of rain-soaked roses. The once lush garden was now wild, neglected. The flowers had withered. The vines curled around the stone paths like veins. I knelt beside the center bed, the one Grandma had called the heart of the garden. There, a single rose bush still bloomed, vibrant red against the darkness. It looked untouched, almost protected. I whispered, "You really never gave up, did you, Nana?" Then I started digging. The soil was wet, soft, but heavy. My hands ached. Mud splattered on my jeans. But I didn't stop. The moonlight cut through the clouds, glinting off something buried just beneath the surface. Metal. My breath caught. I brushed the dirt away until the shape revealed itself. A small, rusted tin box wrapped in old cloth. I lifted it carefully, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Inside the box, there was a small velvet pouch, a few folded documents, and a flash drive. My hands trembled as I opened the pouch. Inside, a gold locket with a photograph of Grandma on one side and a baby's face on the other. A baby I didn't recognize, and then I saw it, carved faintly on the inside of the lid. For the truth they tried to bury. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I stuffed everything back inside, wiped the dirt from my hands, and hurried back toward the car. But just as I reached the gate, I froze. A light flicked on in the house. Upstairs, my father's window. The silhouette moved, tall, deliberate, pacing. Then it stopped, turned, facing me. Even from that distance, I could feel his gaze. For a moment, I didn't breathe. Then I ran. I didn't stop until I got home. I locked every door, every window, then sat at my kitchen table, staring at the box like it might vanish if I blinked. Finally, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. It took a few seconds to load. And when it did, there were dozens of scanned documents, property records, bank transfers, legal letters, and then audio files. The first one was labeled March 11th. I clicked play. There was static at first, then a familiar voice, Grandpa's. "If anyone finds this, It means I've failed. Thomas isn't who he pretends to be. He's been forcing me to sign documents I don't understand. He threatened your grandmother. Static again. My pulse spiked. I clicked the next one. He forged her signature on the estate documents. Said it was temporary. I was a fool to believe him. If Emma ever hears this, tell her I'm sorry. She was right. Her father. He's not the man he shows the world. The voice broke, heavy with regret. I covered my mouth, tears burning my eyes. Grandpa knew. He knew. I leaned back, shaking, trying to take it all in. My father had forged legal papers, manipulated his own parents, lied at the funeral, and I'd been called a liar for trying to stop him. Now I had the proof. But proof wasn't enough. People like him didn't fall easily. He had influence, money, control. I needed a plan. I opened the rest of the files, scanning them for something bigger, something that could expose him completely. That's when I found it, a document labeled Transfer of Estate 2019. It showed that months before Grandma's death, my father had secretly moved their assets. Not just to himself, but to a company under a different name, RD Holdings. At first, I thought it was some corporate shell, but when I checked the director list, my blood went cold. RD. Richard Delaney. Grandpa's name. He'd stolen everything under the guise of keeping it in his father's name, to make it look legitimate, and it worked. Until now, the next morning, I took the documents to a lawyer, a friend from university named Claire. She'd always been sharp, unshakable. When I spread the papers across her desk, her eyes widened. Emma, this is huge. This could put your father away for years. I don't care about revenge, I said. I just want to stop him. She nodded slowly. Then we'll do it the right way. Legally, carefully. If this gets out too early, he'll cover his tracks. We need to collect everything. She handed me a small notebook. Start documenting everything you remember. Every threat, every manipulation. We'll build a case. I exhaled shakily. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe, just maybe, justice was possible. But deep down, I knew something Claire didn't. My father wouldn't go down quietly. That night, as I walked home from the office, I noticed a black car parked across the street from my building. Its engine was running, headlights off. I slowed down. The driver's window rolled down slightly. And there, a familiar voice. Nice night, isn't it, Emma? My heart stopped. He stepped out, hands in his coat pockets, smiling like a man who had already won. Dad, I whispered. He glanced at the tin box in my hand. You've been busy. I took a step back. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you sneaking around my property? Rosa saw your car near the garden. Of course. Rosa. I didn't blame her. She probably had no idea what she'd done. He sighed, shaking his head. You should have just left things alone. I'm not afraid of you anymore. He smiled faintly. You should be. Then he leaned closer, his voice dropping low and venomous. Because you have no idea what you've just started. He turned, got back in his car, and drove off. The taillights fading into the dark. I stood there for a long time after he left. The wind cold against my face, the tin box pressed tightly against my chest, and for the first time in my life, I understood what Grandma meant. This wasn't about money. It was about truth, and the truth always demands a price. That night, I packed my things again. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't running away this time. I was going to finish what Grandma started. The next few days felt like walking through a dream. The kind that looks real, but feels wrong underneath. I barely slept. Every shadow outside my window made me flinch. Every unknown number that called made my stomach twist. My father knew I had the box, and that meant he knew I was a threat. I tried to stay calm. Claire, my lawyer friend, had hidden the original documents in her office safe. No one can touch them there, she promised. He'll try to intimidate you, but as long as we stay quiet, we'll win this legally. But I knew my father. He didn't fight fair. 2 days later, I came home to find my apartment door ajar. The lights were off. Everything looked undisturbed. But when I walked inside, I saw it immediately. The photo frame on my bedside table, the one of Grandma and me in the garden, was shattered, and lying on my pillow, neatly placed, was a single rose, a red rose. The scent filled the entire room. The same scent that used to linger on Grandma's hands, but now it made me sick. There was no note, no message. He didn't need one. I sat on the bed shaking, tears blurring my vision. Why are you doing this? I whispered into the emptiness. No answer, just silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. The next morning, Claire called. Her voice was tight. Emma, we need to meet, now. I rushed to her office. When I arrived, she was pale, her desk covered in files. They froze your accounts, she said. Every one of them. What? I don't know how, but your father's legal team submitted a claim, saying you stole confidential family documents. They're using it as justification to block access until the case is reviewed. I felt dizzy. That's impossible. He's the one who forged the will. I know, she said gently, but we can't prove it yet. The recordings aren't admissible without authentication, and if he's already pulling strings, he probably has people inside the system helping him. I sank into the chair. So what do I do now? Claire leaned forward. Lay low, don't contact him. Don't post anything online. We'll find a way to expose him, but you need to stay safe. Safe. The word felt meaningless, because later that evening, when I returned to my apartment again, my phone started buzzing with messages. Dozens of them, all from old family friends, relatives, even co-workers. Rumors about me, that I'd stolen money from Grandma's foundation, that I'd blackmailed my father for inheritance, that I was mentally unstable. My father was poisoning everyone against me, and it was working. The following weekend, I got a call from my mother. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me hoped. Maybe she was calling to say she believed me, to tell me she was leaving him. Emma. Her voice cracked the moment she spoke. Please stop this. Stop what? Your father is heartbroken. You're destroying this family. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Heartbroken. Mom, he forged Grandpa's signature. He's lying to everyone. I have proof. She hesitated. Proof? Yes. Documents. Recordings. Everything. Her tone changed. Where are they? Something cold prickled at the back of my neck. Why? I asked. Because maybe if we show your father, he'll understand you didn't mean to hurt anyone. I cut her off. You're not calling to help me. He told you to ask, didn't he? Emma, don't, I said. Don't pretend you're doing this for me. Silence. Then quietly, you don't understand what he's capable of. My chest tightened. Then you do know what he's done. Please, she whispered, voice trembling. Just stop, before it's too late. And then the line went dead. That night, I went back through the recordings again, listening to Grandpa's voice over and over, searching for something I might have missed. Each word felt heavier than the last. His regret, his fear, his warning. And then, in one of the final files, I heard something new, static. Then Grandpa's voice, weak but clear. If anything happens to me, the key is with Henry. He knows where the documents are. I froze. Henry. That was my grandfather's accountant. An old man who had disappeared right after the funeral. My father said he'd retired overseas. But what if he hadn't? The next morning, I tracked down an old number from Grandma's address book. It was disconnected. Then I tried another one, an old office listing. To my surprise, someone picked up. Hello, this is Miller's Accounting. A woman said, "Hi, I'm looking for Henry." "Henry Miller. He used to handle the Delaney estate." There was a pause. Then a hushed voice. "Who's calling?" "His client's granddaughter, Emma." Another pause. Then, quietly, "He doesn't work here anymore, but he left something for you." My breath caught. "For me?" "Yes. He said if anyone named Emma ever called, to give this address." She read it out. A small town 2 hours outside the city. By noon, I was on the road. The farther I drove, the more I felt like I was moving backward in time. Away from the chaos, toward the truth. The address led me to a quiet cottage by the lake. The door was locked, but there was an envelope taped to it. On the front, "For Emma Delaney." Inside was a short note. "I knew your father would come after me. I kept a copy of everything. If you're reading this, it means he's already found the originals. Follow the waterline behind the property. There's a boathouse. Look under the second plank." I followed the directions, heart hammering. The boathouse was small, half collapsed, smelling of damp wood and moss. I knelt and pried open the second plank with a rusted crowbar. Underneath, a waterproof metal cylinder. I opened it, hands shaking. Inside were more papers, and a small USB when I plugged it into my laptop later. My screen filled with scanned letters, signed confessions, bank ledgers, correspondence between my father and a lawyer who wasn't supposed to exist. He hadn't just manipulated Grandma and Grandpa. He'd orchestrated the transfer before Grandma got sick. He'd made her believe she was protecting the family, when in reality, she was signing everything away. And worse, one letter revealed that Grandma's death might not have been natural. She was starting to remember. She wanted to call the lawyer. I told Thomas it was too dangerous. He said he'd handle it. I stared at those words until they blurred. My whole body went cold. He said he'd handle it. I could barely breathe. My grandmother hadn't just died. She'd been silenced. That night, I called Claire again. My voice was shaking as I told her everything. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Emma, this isn't just fraud anymore. This is criminal." "I know," I whispered. "And I'm not running this time." She exhaled. "Then we move carefully. We'll take this to the authorities, but not until we have everything. One mistake and he'll bury it again." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. He already buried enough. As I hung up, I looked out the window at the dark lake. The reflection of the moon rippled across the water, soft and haunting. Somewhere out there, I felt like Grandma was watching, not with sadness, but with quiet strength. And for the first time, I whispered back, "I'm not afraid anymore." But I should have been, because while I was planning to expose my father, he was already planning something else, something that would shatter everything I thought I knew. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing non-stop. Calls, messages, notifications. Something was wrong. When I finally picked it up, my screen was flooded with news alerts. My name, my face, everywhere. Heiress accused of embezzlement and blackmail. Emma Delaney, under investigation for family fraud. My heart stopped. There were even photos. Taken without my knowledge. Me leaving Claire's office. Me at the cemetery last week. They painted a story I didn't recognize. A story that made him look like the victim. I sat frozen, my hands trembling. My father had done it. He'd framed me. And this time, he didn't just want to discredit me. He wanted to destroy me. Within hours, police officers were at my apartment. 2 of them stood at my door, calm but firm. "Miss Delaney, we have a warrant for your arrest." I couldn't even speak. My mind went blank as they cuffed my hands, reading me rights I barely heard. Neighbors peeked out from their doors as I was escorted to the car, their whispers slicing through me like glass. By the time we reached the station, my chest felt hollow. They took my phone, my bag, everything. Then they showed me the evidence emails, supposedly from my account, demanding money from my father in exchange for family secrets, bank transfers, all traced to an account under my name, even a voice recording, doctored, edited, that sounded like me threatening him. My father had created an entire story, every piece of it meticulously crafted, to make me look guilty. When the detective leaned back in his chair, studying me, he said softly, "You know, Emma, you don't look like the type to do something like this." I didn't, I whispered. "My father set me up," he sighed. "That's what they all say." They released me on bail after Claire pulled every string she could. When I stepped outside, the night air felt like ice. Paparazzi lights flashed in my face, reporters shouting questions. "Emma, is it true you blackmailed your father? Are you being cut out of the inheritance? Did your grandmother leave you the documents?" I pushed through the chaos until I saw Claire's car. She opened the door and pulled me inside. "Drive?" I whispered. She did. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, she said, "He's faster than I thought. The moment you found that second USB, he must have known." I stared out the window, the city lights blurring. "He's not trying to protect himself anymore, Claire. He's trying to erase me." She tightened her grip on the wheel. "Then we fight harder." But the next morning, things got worse. The news had turned savage. Every network was airing interviews. Old family friends, distant relatives, all saying the same thing. That I'd always been unstable. That Grandma pitied me. That I had imagined being close to her. My father appeared on a morning talk show, his voice heavy with grief. "I don't blame my daughter," he said solemnly. "She's been under a lot of pressure since my mother's passing. I just hope she gets the help she needs." The audience clapped sympathetically. I threw the remote at the screen. "Help I need?" I screamed. "He killed her." Tears spilled down my face. I sank to the floor, shaking. Claire crouched beside me. "Emma, listen to me. We still have the real evidence. The recordings, the ledger, Henry's files. He can't fake those." "He can fake everything, Claire. Even me." She grabbed my shoulders. "Then we take it public. But not now. If we leak this without protection, he'll twist it again. We need to go to someone who can't be bought." "Who?" "Investigative press, independent journalists, people who live off the truth." We started making calls, quietly, secretly. But by the second day, we realized something horrifying. No one wanted the story. Every journalist we contacted said the same thing. "Sorry, legal risk. We can't run that. The Delaney name is too powerful." It was like every door was locked, every voice silenced, until one night when I got a message from an unknown number. "If you really want the world to hear the truth, meet me tonight, midnight, at the bridge by the old Delaney property." I showed it to Claire. She frowned. "It could be a trap." "I know," I said, "but it could also be the only chance I have left." She looked at me for a long time, then handed me a small voice recorder. "Take this. Record everything." The sky was heavy with clouds when I reached the bridge. The wind carried the scent of rain and earth. A figure was waiting by the railing. A man in a dark coat, his face half hidden. "Emma?" "Yes," I said cautiously. He turned. I recognized him instantly. "Henry, the accountant. You're alive," I whispered. He nodded. "Barely, your father. He sent people after me. I've been hiding ever since." He handed me a small envelope. "This is the rest of it. The original ledger. The one that proves he redirected the money. And what he did to your grandmother." My hands shook as I took it. "Thank you. I couldn't save her," he said quietly. "But you can still stop him." Before I could say anything else, headlights suddenly cut through the darkness. A black SUV. I heard tires screech, doors slam, voices shouting. "Go!" Henry yelled. "Run!" I turned and bolted into the woods. clutching the envelope. Behind me, chaos erupted, shouting, footsteps, someone screaming my name. A gunshot cracked the air. I froze, heart racing, then silence. I didn't look back. I just ran until the trees swallowed me whole. I spent the night hiding in an abandoned shed by the lake. My clothes were soaked, my hands trembling. I couldn't stop thinking about Henry. If he was alive, if he'd been caught, but when I opened the envelope, I knew his sacrifice hadn't been for nothing. Inside were signed letters, my father's handwriting, and a photo I hadn't seen before. Grandma, lying in her hospital bed, and beside her, my father, holding a syringe. The timestamp was the night she died. My throat closed. Tears blurred the photo until it dissolved in my hands. This was it. The proof. The final piece. He hadn't just stolen from her. He'd murdered her. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. By dawn, I'd made my choice. If the system wouldn't help me, and the media was afraid, I'd expose him myself. No lawyers. No interviews. Just me and the truth. I'd release every document, every photo, every recording, even if it destroyed me in the process. But as I packed my things, I caught a glimpse of something through the cracked window. A car parked across the lake. Black. Silent. And though I couldn't see his face, I knew. My father was watching. He knew I was still alive, and he was waiting for me to make the next move. The day the truth went public started quietly, almost too quietly. A thin layer of fog wrapped around the lake that morning, and the air smelled like rain and pine. I hadn't slept in 2 days. My eyes burned from tears and exhaustion, but I didn't care anymore. I sat at Claire's kitchen table, the evidence spread before me. The recordings, the ledgers, the photos, my entire life, reduced to files and secrets. Claire stood by the window, watching the empty road. If you do this, Emma, there's no going back. I already went too far to stop, I said. He took everything, my name, my peace, my grandmother's life. If I stay silent now, I'd be giving him her soul. She turned to face me. Then we make it loud. We set up everything that morning. Encrypted uploads, anonymous posts, backup copies stored on drives, hidden in multiple places. If they tried to delete one, 5 more would appear. And then I hit publish. The sound of that click. It felt like thunder. Years of silence collapsing in a single heartbeat. Within minutes, it spread like wildfire. The files went viral. The recordings, the photos, the bank statements showing the embezzlement, the proof of the forged medical reports from Grandma's death. The internet lit up like a storm. Delaney scandal. Justice. For Margaret Noshka, Emma speaks for the first time. The world saw him for who he really was. By afternoon, news stations couldn't ignore it anymore. Broadcasts cut into regular programming to show snippets of the evidence. Reporters camped outside the Delaney estate. Helicopters circling the mansion. Business tycoon Richard Delaney, accused of fraud and elder abuse. New evidence suggests possible foul play in Margaret Delaney's death. I watched from Claire's couch, tears slipping silently down my face. I'd expected relief, but what I felt was emptiness, because deep down I realized exposing him didn't bring Grandma back. It didn't erase what he did, but it was justice. And justice, even cold and imperfect, was something. By evening, chaos had erupted at the Delaney mansion. Protesters gathered outside the gates, shouting for answers. The family company's stock plummeted. And then, the live broadcast, he appeared. My father, standing at the podium, pale but composed, cameras flashing, his voice steady. These accusations, he said, are the work of a disturbed individual. My daughter has been manipulated, perhaps blackmailed. She is not well. Please respect our family's privacy during this tragic time. I laughed bitterly. He's still doing it. Playing the victim. Claire crossed her arms. He's cornered. Watch what happens next. And she was right. Within 24 hours, federal investigators reopened the Delaney Trust case. They subpoenaed financial records, froze accounts, and questioned staff. Henry's documents, the ones I'd leaked, matched every bank trail, every signature. There was no way out this time. By the third day, my father vanished. He didn't show up at work, didn't return calls, didn't even go home. They found his car near the old factory site, the same one where Grandma used to bring us on weekends, when the family still made handcrafted furniture, before the business became an empire. But he wasn't there. For the next few days, my life turned into a blur of interviews and statements. Police, lawyers, reporters. Some people praised me. Others called me a liar, but none of it mattered anymore. I just wanted to breathe again. One night, as I was packing to move out of my apartment, I found something strange in the mail. A small brown envelope, no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper. You think you've won, but you don't know everything. And beneath that, a photograph of me, taken from outside my window. Fear crawled up my spine. I called Claire, my voice trembling. He's watching me. She arrived within minutes. Her face went pale when she saw the photo. Emma, we need to go, now. We grabbed what we could and drove to her brother's place in another town, miles away. The night stretched endlessly. I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. Had I pushed him too far? Was this how it ended? Me hiding while he hunted from the shadows. Claire tried to reassure me. He's losing control. This is desperation. But deep down, I knew my father too well. He didn't give up. He retaliated. At dawn, I walked outside into the cold morning air, trying to clear my thoughts. The grass sparkled with dew, and the world was eerily calm. And then I saw it. A figure at the edge of the property, half hidden behind the trees. He was standing perfectly still, watching me. Even from that distance, I knew it was him. My father. Our eyes met for just a second, and then he turned and disappeared into the woods. I stood there, frozen, the air heavy in my lungs. He wasn't running from the law. He was coming for me. Later that day, the police called. They'd found more sealed letters in the family archive, proving that Grandma had been rewriting her will before she died. She'd planned to leave everything, the estate, the business, the trust, to me. But the new will never made it to the lawyer's office. The day she was supposed to sign it was the night she passed away. I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. It all made sense now. He didn't just kill her for money. He killed her because she chose me. For a moment, I thought about giving up, about running away again. But then I remembered Grandma's voice. Never let anyone decide what you deserve, Emma. So I didn't. 2 days later, I agreed to a live interview. One final statement. No script. No PR filters. Just me and the truth. When the camera light blinked red, I looked straight ahead and began. My father taught me that power is inherited, but my grandmother taught me that character is earned. She didn't raise a coward, and she didn't raise a liar. I'm not here to clear my name. I'm here to clear hers. The host was silent. The room was silent, and for once, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't afraid. I was finally free. The broadcast went viral overnight. Public opinion shifted sharply. The police reopened the investigation into Grandma's death as a possible homicide. And then, a week later, they found him. Hiding in a cabin 3 hours north, surrounded by cash and documents. He didn't resist. He just looked at the officers and said, "Tell Emma she's more like me than she thinks." When I saw his photo on the news, handcuffed, his eyes hollow, I didn't feel triumph. I felt nothing. The revenge, the chaos, the truth. It had all burned through me like wildfire, leaving only ashes behind. But in those ashes, I found something precious, peace. A month later, I returned to Grandma's grave. The leaves had begun to fall again, the same golden color as that day at her funeral. I knelt, tracing her name with my fingers. "I did it, Grandma," I whispered. "They know now." The wind rustled softly, like her voice saying, "Good girl." And for the first time in years, I smiled. Not the kind of smile that hides pain, but the kind that finally lets it go. Winter arrived early that year. The trees were bare, the skies grey, and everything around me felt heavy. Like the world was still mourning the truth it had finally learned. It had been 6 weeks since my father's arrest. 6 weeks since my name stopped trending, for all the wrong reasons. The trial date had been set, and for the first time since everything began, I would have to face him again. Not as a daughter, not as a victim, but as the last witness standing between him and the empire he tried to bury me under. The courthouse smelled of old wood and cold marble. Every sound echoed. The shuffle of papers, the scratch of pens, the whisper of people who once called me crazy. I sat quietly at the plaintiff's table, hands folded tightly in my lap. Claire sat beside me, her presence grounding me, her eyes saying what words couldn't. "You can do this." Then the doors opened. He walked in. My father, dressed in a plain grey suit, thinner than I remembered, but his presence still carried that same suffocating weight. Like he was the center of gravity in every room he entered. For a moment, our eyes met, and just like that, I was 10 years old again. The little girl he used to scold for crying, the one who always apologized, even when she didn't understand why, but not anymore. This time, I didn't look away. The prosecution began by laying out the evidence I'd leaked. The forged documents, the secret accounts, the handwritten letters proving he altered Grandma's will. Then came the part that still made my heart ache. The medical reports, showing the sedatives that shouldn't have been in Grandma's bloodstream. The courtroom grew still. Every word was a hammer, striking against the man who'd once built his kingdom on intimidation and fear. He sat motionless, expression unreadable, as the evidence unraveled the life he'd tried to protect. When the prosecutor asked him if he had anything to say, he finally leaned forward, his voice quiet but sharp. "I didn't kill my mother," he said. "She asked me to help her go." Gasps rippled through the room. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Was it a lie? Another manipulation? Or could there have been something I didn't know? The judge silenced the room and called a recess. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Cameras flashed. Microphones reached forward. Voices collided. But I couldn't hear any of it. All I could hear was that one sentence replaying in my mind. "She asked me to help her go." It haunted me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept turning over every memory I had of Grandma. The way she smiled when she was tired. How she whispered, "It's okay, Emma," even when it wasn't. Had she really asked him? And if she had, did he twist her last wish into a weapon? The next morning, before court resumed, one of the guards brought me a sealed envelope. The handwriting stopped me cold. It was his. For Emma, to be opened only after my testimony. I tucked it into my bag, unsure if I wanted to know what it contained. When the trial resumed, my father took the stand. For the first time, he didn't look powerful. He looked haunted. He spoke slowly, carefully, as if every word was a confession he'd practiced 1,000 times. "My mother was sick," he began. "The doctors said it was just her heart, but I knew. She'd been fading for months. She didn't want to live in pain. She asked me to help her sleep peacefully." The courtroom was silent. "But the night she died," he continued, "she changed her mind. She told me she wanted to rewrite the will. I thought she was confused. I told her it was too late, and when she said she'd leave everything to Emma, I lost control. He looked straight at me. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted her to rest. But when I saw her go, I told myself it was what she wanted. My chest tightened, tears burning at the edges of my eyes. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him he was lying again. But something in his face stopped me. There was no arrogance left in him, just emptiness, the kind that comes when a person finally realizes they've become the villain in their own story. When it was my turn to testify, I walked up to the stand, my heels echoing on the polished floor. The judge asked if I was ready. I said yes, and then I told everything about the funeral, the betrayal, the setup, the fear. I didn't cry. I didn't stutter. I spoke as a woman who had already survived the fire. When I finished, the courtroom was quiet. Even my father couldn't look at me. After closing statements, the judge called a break before announcing the verdict. I stepped outside for air, the sky heavy with snow. Claire joined me, her breath forming little clouds in the cold. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "you already won." I nodded, but inside, I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I'd lost too much: family, trust, innocence, but I'd gained something else: clarity, and maybe that was enough. When court resumed, everyone stood. The judge read the verdict slowly. Guilty on all major counts: fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction. Sentenced to 25 years. I closed my eyes. A tear slipped down, not of joy, but of release. My father didn't react. He just turned his head slightly, looking at me one last time, and then he whispered something I'll never forget. "You got your strength from her, not me." They led him away, his footsteps fading into silence. That night, I finally opened the envelope. Inside was a short letter, written in his shaky handwriting. "Emma, you were right about me. I destroyed everything I touched, even love. But I want you to know something you never heard from anyone else. Your grandmother didn't just choose you because she loved you. She chose you because she saw herself in you. Her courage, her fire, her refusal to bend. I hated that, because I saw myself too. The part of me that feared being forgotten. The part that couldn't let go of control. If there's one thing I regret, it's not what I did to the estate. It's what I did to you. Don't let this name define you. Make something of your own. And when you do, don't carry my ghost with you." Dad, I sat there for a long time, staring at the paper through tears I didn't expect for years. I'd wanted him to feel remorse, to say sorry, and though it came too late, those words still cracked something open inside me. A wound I didn't realize I was still holding closed. The next morning, I went back to the lake house, Grandma's favorite place. The fog had lifted, and the water glimmered under pale winter sunlight. I burned the letter slowly, watching the ashes scatter into the wind. Then I whispered, "I forgive you, but I'll never forget." In that moment, I understood what revenge really was. It wasn't about punishing him. It was about reclaiming myself. The version of me that existed before the lies, before the pain. And maybe that's what Grandma wanted all along. Not for me to win, but to heal. Winter had finally loosened its grip. The snow melted into the earth, leaving puddles that reflected the first hints of spring. Life, in its stubborn way, insisted on moving forward, and I knew it had to. After the trial, I retreated from the spotlight. I stayed with Claire's family for a few weeks, rebuilding the fragments of my life that had been shattered. Emails, messages, interviews, all piled in the corner, waiting. But I didn't touch them. Not yet. I needed silence. I needed air. I needed to remember who I was before the chaos consumed everything. One morning, I returned to the estate. The Delaney property, now quiet and empty. The gates had been unlocked after the trial. The house felt hollow. I wandered through the rooms I had grown up in, memories flooding back. Grandma in the kitchen, teaching me to bake. My father scolding me for spilling flour on the carpet. Grandpa laughing in the study, unaware of the storm to come. I paused in the garden. The roses, once overgrown and wild, had begun to bloom again. Grandma's touch seemed to linger in the petals, in the soil she had loved so much. I knelt and pressed my fingers to the dirt. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything, for showing me strength, for showing me love, for showing me how to fight without losing myself." The estate became my sanctuary. I organized the foundation Grandma had left behind, making sure her work continued. The orphanages, the scholarships, the programs for underprivileged children. I brought them back to life. Each act, a small tribute, a way to honor her memory and her values. And in doing so, I healed. I also reconnected with friends I had lost along the way. Claire stayed by my side, not as a lawyer, but as family. We laughed again. We cried together. We planned for the future. For the first time in years, without fear in the shadows. Even the community started to rally around me. People who had once doubted me now saw the truth. Not through the scandal, not through the headlines, but through the work I was doing, quietly, steadily, to make the world a little better. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in orange and pink, I walked along the path Grandma had loved most. The one that led to the small boathouse by the lake. I held the tin box, the USB drives, the letters, all remnants of a past I could never fully erase. But I didn't feel anger anymore. Not truly. I opened the box one last time. Inside were the memories, the proof, the recordings, the photographs. I looked at each one, and instead of hate, I felt gratitude for the truth, for the lessons, for the clarity that came from surviving it all. Then I set the box down at the edge of the water and let it sink slowly into the lake, waves swallowing it with gentle reverence. It was time to let go. As I walked back toward the house, the roses brushed against my legs, the scent of earth and life surrounding me. I realized something profound. Revenge had never been about my father. It had been about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my soul, and now I was free. Weeks later, I stood at the edge of the community center we had restored in Grandma's honor. Children ran around, laughing, their joy echoing off the walls. I smiled, thinking of how far I had come, from grief, betrayal, and fear, to hope, resilience, and light. Grandma had given me more than a legacy of wealth. She had given me a legacy of courage, love, and the strength to rise after every fall. And I promised myself, as I watched the sun set over the horizon, that I would never squander it, because life, no matter how cruel, always gave you a second chance. If you were brave enough to take it, I was brave. And now, my story, our story, could finally breathe. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one. Peace out!